Saints head coach Kellen Moore on selecting quarterback Tyler Shough and other day 2 picks. Okay, so we are going to hear from the old ball coach. We're going to hear from Kellen Moore about the Tyler Shough selection. There's been a lot of talk. Obviously, there will be a lot of talk. I mean, look, this guy is the franchise quarterback of the New Orleans Saints, whether it's for a year or 2 years or 12 years or whatever. It is what it is. And this is a guy who we'll be talking about a ton. Huge pick. Again, This guy was drafted 40th overall, which is the highest the Saints have drafted a quarterback since 1970. Okay, so huge deal. Now, I say all that to say this. I saw this come through on Reddit, and this is some of the comments that are under, I guess, the Tyler Shough stuff. Guys, let's relax, okay? Let's relax. At the end of the day, it's football. At the end of the day, this guy's a prospect, just got drafted, hasn't even thrown a football yet for us. We have to balance our opinions and we have to balance our analysis and all that with trusting Kellen Moore, trusting the Saints, trusting this guy, and seeing what happens, okay? So I do think this is a little beyond the pale. Let's not attack Tyler Shough, okay? Let's not do that. So this is a little bit much. But we're going to go ahead and break into the analysis. We're going to break into some commentary here, and we'll see what Kellen has to say about it.
See through his career, battled through obviously multiple unfortunate injuries that kind of took him through a navigating process. But as we went through this process, just the more touching points we had with Tyler, the more impressed we got. He was a guy who went through this whole process. I think it's unique when you have a guy who went through the Senior Bowl, did the whole entire combine, went through the visits. Scott went out there and saw him at Louisville. We had a 30 visit with him. Every interaction just, really enforced, the player that he was. And so as you go through this QB process, obviously never easy decisions with that. Just felt like he was a really good quarterback. He was ready. He's prepared. Obviously, he's been through a lot in a good way, and so he's ready to compete in our quarterback room as it plays itself out.
So I mean, Shough is interesting because on one hand, he is experienced. I mean, he's been in college for 7 years. He's been multiple teams, multiple systems, all that stuff. But at the same time, he really isn't. He's a very raw prospect. He's only played 1 year of college football, pretty much. He's only played one full season in its entirety. We have 1 year to see this body of work. And yeah, there's 3 games here, 4 games here, 7 games here, 5 games here. But as far as a full season, you got 1 year, and that 1 year was not a polished year. That 1 year was not 4,800 yards, 35 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 50 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That year was kind of sporadic. So on one hand, he is this like veteran, I guess you could say, or he does understand the process and he's been through it. But on the other end, he is a developmental player. He is a prospect. He is a project. And that's kind of been my whole thing with this is it's less about the arm talent and less about the anticipation or his ability to roll out and all that. I'm not doubting any of that. He ran a 4.6 at the combine. Great athlete. This guy can move. The physical stuff is there. My question is, does the scheme and the system and the timing all align to make this successful? Okay. Shough has to be really good, really fast. And that's a big ask, and it's a gamble, and it's a risk. And, I do trust Kellen Moore. I have no choice but to trust Kellen Moore. I hope Tyler Shough is the best player in the world. I hope he comes in week 1. I hope he's a rookie of the year. I hope he is fantastic from the jump, and I hope we get a solid career out of him. That would make me the happiest guy in the world. I am rooting for Tyler Shough, 100%. But I have a lot of questions.
Going to Vernon, obviously just a phenomenal kid. Just the energy, the juice that he brings. Our chance to go out there for their pro day, we had a chance to kind of connect with a lot of those Texas guys, and obviously this is our second one that we got. So, he played behind a lot of premier defensive linemen when he was there, and so as a result, he kind of had to be patient. And sometimes you credit these guys that play the patient game, that kind of earn their opportunities on the field. And for him, obviously, it took a little while just as he waited his turn. But Bo and Terry had great relationships with him. Obviously, when you have people in-house who've invested with these guys, who spend a lot of time with them, huge advantage for us. His versatility on the defensive line, his ability to play in a number of positions, I think is going to be great for us. He's got length, he's got quickness, he can anchor, he's got good hands. He'll have a chance definitely to compete with our interior defensive line group. And then Jonas Sanker, This guy's a 3-year starter at Virginia, special teams. He's a captain. He just
It is kind of interesting. The Saints in the offseason, go get Justin Reed, they go get Godchaw, and then boom, defensive tackle, boom, safety. And so, they're trying to fortify some positions here.
Does everything. And this guy is, for us, we just felt really, really fortunate to be sitting there late in that draft. There's a lot of DBs that were going off the board, and for him to still be there and available to us, we're talking about him for a while, and so just really impressed by this guy. His play style, his instincts, his ability to, his tackling ability is really, really impressive. His ability to play on the back end. We're really fired up to have this guy. He'll obviously provide tremendous depth and add competition to the safety position there. So excited about all three. That was a big time day for us. We were really excited about it. And any questions?
By the way, the Saints took Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma with a pick while I'm filming this. Love that pick. Love that player. Stud, absolute dog at Oklahoma. Maybe my second favorite pick so far of the Saints' entire draft.
You mentioned Tyler's the adversity on the phone call to him was one of the first things you said here. Like, why is that? Why is that something that kind of stands out and is important in that scouting process?
Yeah, I think all quarterbacks go through adversity, and there's challenges as you go through this. And those guys who can handle adversity tend to thrive in this league. And so, Tyler certainly dealt with some that are very unfortunate. Especially when they're orthopedic injuries. They're not, some of the other ones. They're just bones, and sometimes bones break, and you get in unfortunate situations. And for him to continue to rebound from those and then play at such a high level this past year, again, as we went through this process, he kind of just built momentum as we kind of went through this whole thing.
Like he's talking about the injuries. Tyler Shough he had three season-ending injuries. All right, he broke his collarbone twice and he broke his fibia. When I keep talking about this really tight window that the Saints have put themselves in, and it's really small. There's razor's thin margin of error for the Saints. That's kind of a good example where if Tyler Shough gets injured, or not even Shough, but just if a guy in his situation gets injured and misses a year or misses half of a year, because of that razor thin margin, it's kind of over. Like if he misses time and all of a sudden Rattler has to play, or if he misses a whole year or whatever, and that's why the age thing at its absolute core, the fact that he's 26 is not that big of a deal. But when you add it into NFL contracts, when you add it into the season, when you add it into the Saints winning window, and you add it into all of that stuff, and it spits out the formula, it doesn't really jive. It doesn't really add up. Even with Derek Carr. Okay, if Derek Carr were on the Saints, this makes even less sense. And I guess Derek Carr is on the Saints, but if Derek Carr is the Saints quarterback, it makes even less sense because now you've got a guy who is going to sit behind Carr, but to develop, but then he's taken over at 27, right? So it's like, well, then if you're going to do that, if you do have Derek Carr playing, then you would not want a 26-year-old quarterback. So it's all about like the context, and I'm not. Like just in a vacuum, 26 on its own isn't that big of a deal. But you have to add in everything else that makes it kind of challenging.
Tyler's such a unique example, I think, even for the imperfect scouting process of a guy who, at the Senior Bowl, I don't think he was on a lot of radars as being drafted as high he was, and sort of people caught up late to that. But was he somebody that you guys recognized right away that everybody's just kind of missing on him being talked about among the elite guys in this class?
I think it's a good question of momentum. I think it's a momentum as you talk about this process. I think it's a good example of how long this process can be and how there's all these different touching base points and their potential building blocks for these guys. And for him, to go, compete in the Senior Bowl, to go to the Combine, he just did everything and just went for it. Then he went and did his pro day and like all these different steps, and he just continued to take advantage of them. I thought it's a really good example. Our scouting department was really on this guy. They did a lot of work, even going back to Texas Tech, back to Oregon. These guys knew his whole story. They were really on him for a number of years. And so, as coaches, we kind of join this process as it goes. And for those guys, they already kind of had this thing building. And for us to kind of come in and see all the work that had been done, and then to continue to interact with Tyler, again, momentum was definitely valuable to him.
really shows you the difference that can make, where you have someone like Will Johnson who doesn't do the combine, doesn't do a pro day, doesn't run the 40, doesn't do all this, and you see him slide, there is no momentum. And then you see someone like Tyler Shough who does everything, and you see how that can boost that stock to where, Shough goes from no one knows him to top 50 pick. Will Johnson goes from top 10 pick to, all of a sudden he's in the same ballpark as Shough. So
I know it's kind of a group effort, obviously, but would you say he was a guy that you personally really like, that he's like kind of your guy? I mean, look, there's a bunch of quarterbacks to pick from in this draft.
Yeah, we certainly feel great about him. We feel like he's he's ready to compete in this group. I think we have a really competitive, really high level quarterback room. Obviously, starting with Derek. Derek's obviously dealing with his shoulder at the time, and so we'll kind of navigate that as it goes. But behind him, now you got Spencer, you got Jake, you got Ben, you got Tyler. We got this really competitive group. All these guys really, you saw them coming through this process, and you're a big fan of all of them. And so we feel like we're in a really good space there to allow this thing to compete and kind of go through this process.
All right, so this is a lot of PR spin, obviously, but this part also is kind of messy. So we talked about this last year with Haener and Rattler. The second the Saints draft Rattler, they're telling you everything you need to know about Jake Haener, right? By drafting Shough, they're telling you everything you need to know about Derek Carr, Jake Haener, Ben DiNucci, and Spencer Rattler. All right, Haener is, I know we harp on it a lot, but he honestly might as well not be on the team. It's hate it for him, but it's just how it's played out. Carr, I would assume this speaks volumes about Carr. You don't draft Shough if you think Carr is going to be available. All right, so the idea that Shough, Rattler, and Carr are going to compete, I don't think that's the case. I don't see that. So this is a competition between Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shough. Very similar players, I think. We did a video where their college careers and how they, what they kind of looked like in the draft process, pretty similar. Shough, he runs a 4.6, Rattler runs a 4.95. Like, there's a lot of differences in that aspect, but it's basically Shough versus Rattler. And it's crazy. Let's pretend Carr is actually part of this conversation. It is insane that the New Orleans Saints, in 5 months, when the week one rolls around, Derek Carr could be the starting quarterback, Spencer Rattler could be the starting quarterback, or Tyler Shough could be the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. And those are three very different avenues. Those are three very different trajectories. Very different.
Would Tyler compete for the starting job if Derek was home?
That's a good question.
We felt great about Derek. We've been pretty consistent as we went through this process that we felt great about Derek, and so obviously we'll navigate the injury process of this.
That was a hell of a question. So the question was, will Shough compete if Derek was healthy? Which, now Kellen is this is a tricky situation just as far as like press conference goes, because when you take Tyler Shough, the 40th overall pick, you are saying a lot without saying anything. But now he's being asked to literally say stuff. But he knows he really can't. He knows he can't say too much. He knows he can't come out and say, yeah, Derek Carr's not going to be on the team. He can't come out and say, yeah, Jake Haener's not going to be on the team. He can't come out and say, well, we're kind of cooked at the quarterback position because Derek Carr has a busted shoulder. So he's got to navigate this dance, even though the actions speak, louder than words.
Is there any benefit to like Tyler's age and maturity and experience and exposure to a handful of systems, like just in how he sees the game and processes it? And what did you see when you kind of put him through some exercises?
It's a really good question. I think Tyler's experience, certainly there's value to that. You can see it in the classroom aspect of this thing. His ability to process football at a very easy rate in the classroom. It's really good when you throw him up there and you're watching film and you're talking about plays and concepts. He's got great exposure. He's got great experiences that he can lean on. He's been through a lot of different football, and he's certainly a guy that is very comfortable in that space.
Just in general, the quarterback position, do you view that as a positive? The older player as opposed to maybe a different position, the younger player might be preferable for the development?
can certainly say that naturally that position you can play a little longer within age, just because of that the style in which that position is played compared to so many other positions. And so, his experience is valuable. I mean, these guys are quarterbacks playing well into their 30s. Once they get their opportunity to take advantage of it, those guys can play for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, that part, yes, for sure. Which, in a vacuum, if you just look at the age isn't really that big of a deal. But, again, it's less about the age and it's more about everything else. It's more about how that fits in with the entirety of the Saints puzzle. If we get, like I had someone tell me, Tyler Shough we could get 12 years out of Tyler Shough. And it's like, yeah, I guess so. But think about how small of a percentage that is. Think about how small of a percentage chance that truly is, that Tyler Shough's going to play at a above average level for 12 years in the NFL. That's, you're asking a lot. You're asking, at this point, you'd be happy with 4. You'd be happy with 4 good years with Tyler Shough. But does that match where the Saints are in the next 4 years? How good does Shough have to be to raise those boats? And then you're asking, can Shough in the next 5 months be that much better than he was at Louisville?
How's that big gap between Tyler and the next quarterback was on your board?
A lot of good conversations, a bunch of guys right in there. And, as we went through this process, we felt like there was a lot of good quarterbacks. And ultimately, you have to make a decision. They're never easy. These guys never make it easy because there's a bunch of good quarterbacks coming in this league each and every year. And so you had to go through that process, conversations all the way up, through today, really leading up to it. And so ultimately, you got to make a decision. You just got to go for it.
Were you guys confident he was going to be there at 40? Did you make any calls to go up at all, or were you guys pretty confident that staying at 40 he was going to fall to you guys?
Yeah, we certainly you always have conversations about moving and whatnot, but we felt pretty comfortable about staying at 40. We'd have a good opportunity there, pending how everything played out above us.
Kellen, it's been 3 straight years the Saints have selected a quarterback that played in the Senior Bowl. In fact, Derek Carr played there too. You played in the game, actually 4 out of 5 too, if you go back as well. What is it about that position to play in the game? And you've seen it both ways now for that quarterback, to play in the game and to be successful and to help them out.
I think that's a really good observation. I think for all these quarterbacks, this process is a very thorough process. There's so many touching base points, and we want to try and get it into it as many times as we can. And so I wasn't a part of the Senior Bowl. I wasn't quite here yet, but certainly our.
I'll give you another observation. This is from the 228 Gambling Syndicate. And this might be something moving forward. We see what kind of prospects Kellen Moore likes, but you can look at this draft class, and the one thing that they all have is that they all played a lot of football, and they all are very experienced collegiate players. And then you look at Kellen's career, and he was a very experienced player. He played a ton of college football. So is this something that they value very highly, that we want the reps, we want guys who are experienced, who are mature, who have been through it? That could be something that we see year in and year out, where they're not going to take the Anthony Richardsons who play for 11 games. They're going to err more towards the guys who have 2,000 reps and 5 years and played in multiple situations. So it seems like something they are prioritizing. We'll see how the rest of the draft goes. But
our scouting department was there, and so those guys get to get down on the field, spend time around this guy. All these quarterbacks. You can see a number of the guys in this class as well. Those are big time experiences. They put you through an uncomfortable environment. And you see how these guys respond. I remember being in it as a quarterback. The Minnesota Vikings were our coaches, and Bill Musgrave was our offensive coordinator, and Craig Johnson was our quarterback coach. Kevin Stefanski was our assistant quarterback coach, and they throw you kind of in the fire, and it's a different system, and you're uncomfortable. But it's a really good exposure for you, and I think it's a great testing mark for these guys. And so certainly you've seen a lot of these guys who've been able to achieve great opportunities because of it.
Kellen, what do you specifically like about the way Tyler plays the position on the field, on the tape?
Yeah, I think just great rhythm, anticipation. Certainly you feel like he can hit all marks of the field from a throwing perspective. And, I think he's got a great feel for this game. Obviously, you love the system that he's been exposed to at 3 different places. He's played some different styles, and so I think he's certainly comfortable and flexible within that. And so I think he's got a mind and a arm that in that combination he plays at a really high level.
Was there
Something else we got to kind of accept is that the idea of like, well, why get Tyler Shough? You can wait and get blank. You can wait and get Kyle McCord. You can wait and get Will Howard. We've said for a long time leading up to this, a lot of this depends on their board. And a lot of this depends on their own grade and their own how they're viewing these players. If Kellen Moore does not believe that, Kyle McCord and Tyler Shough are even close, then you got to kind of chalk it up and say, okay, I trust their grading. I trust that evaluation where that's not even a possibility. It's the same thing as, well, why did they just trade back and take whoever? If there wasn't an option to trade back, then it's not even it's a moot point. So why didn't they just cut Derek Carr? If they couldn't cut him, then it's a moot point. So if they have this grade on Shough and they have evaluated and they think he is, because they know what's going on. They're not dumb. They know he's got to play. They know they have a small window. He's got to be ready. And if they think he can be ready, well, okay, we'll see.
there a time when it kind of all started to come together for him, or you saw it at each stop and between each injury kind of?
Certainly, I focus mostly on the Louisville experience. Obviously, the other experiences. There's some you see those in passing more in the past years, but you spend a lot of time invested in this past year's work. That's the quarterback we're looking at right now, and so we felt pretty good.
Yeah, when you have a player that is physically developed and they're 25, 26, 24 years old, same with Bo Nix, same with Michael Penix, that version is probably who you're getting. Now, obviously, you can tool it a little bit. You give them some NFL coaching. It's a new system, all that. But physically, they are kind of who they are. The development process for someone like Anthony Richardson, who came into the draft very young, is different than Tyler Shough, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. You're hoping that version, whether it's the Oregon Bo Nix or Michael Penix, Washington or Louisville Tyler Shough, you're taking almost that final version, putting some NFL polish on it and letting them go and see if they can do it. And that's kind of part of my hesitancy, is that we saw Bo Nix in his final form. We saw Michael Penix in his final form. I don't know if Louisville Tyler Shough is the final form. Because that season wasn't great. It was, had flashes. Okay, there's something here. It is kind of raw. So even though they're experienced players, even though they're older players, it's not as polished at the end where it kind of needs to be when you're drafting a older player like that.
He's talking about your meeting, and he's talking about bad plays, negative plays, how you use that as a growing, learning experience. Is that kind of generally how you approach every position, or specifically quarterback?
I think with quarterback positions, I think for any position, you're always trying to give these guys real honest feedback. And so these guys are all got strengths. They all got great talent that obviously is putting them in this position. I think for all players, all coaches, every person in this situation, there's growth opportunities. And so I think it's always fun when you go through those meetings to kind of share some of those, hey, here's probably the growth steps that I would encourage you to be focused on, and kind of see how they respond and how they acknowledge those. And so these guys all have plenty of growth opportunities. They all have steps that they're going to continue to grow. This is a get in the door opportunity, and then what you make of it is obviously coming forward. So I think obviously he's just one of many of those guys.
This is the highest. Some of the like kind of off-platform, for lack of a better term, trick shot throws. Do you want to kind of encourage some of that creativity, or do you kind of have to rein it in, or kind of pick your spots with that?
Just for him specifically? Yeah, obviously any quarterback, you have to be able to play off schedule. You have to be able to throw at different arm angles. That's an important aspect of this game. These rushers are really good in our league, and so you're going to have to move off the spot. And it's not always going to be clean, and you got to still be able to deliver. And so within that, obviously guys always are going to have growth opportunities as far as the decision-making factor, and when do you live to go to the next play, and when you're trying to still create. And so all these guys, that's a thing that you're going to continue to build each and every year as you go through it. Trial and error.
This is the highest the Saints have taken a quarterback since Archie Manning. With that kind of investment, and what does that mean for Derek's future, not just this season, but maybe beyond that?
Yeah, we just felt like it was a really good player. Obviously, we felt good about Tyler through this process, and I don't think there's anything wrong with ever investing in the quarterback room. We feel like there's a lot of depth in there now as we go through this process, and we'll just let it play out.
You've studied a ton of quarterbacks, obviously, in the last 5 or 10 years. Is there a guy that you think he's sort of like?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't want to throw too many comparisons as far as expectations, but I think. Yeah, I think obviously there's a lot of quarterbacks in our league that play with that rhythm, the timing, the anticipation that he plays with, and so there's a lot of different styles. There's a lot of guys in our league, the Jared Goffs, the Kirk Cousins, the guys that play with that rhythm and timing and feel for it. He can run, and so obviously he doesn't use it all the time like some of the other quarterbacks, but he has the ability to run. Obviously, showed it with the testing numbers that he provided through the combine. And
it's kind of interesting with Shough. Like he is. I mean, a 4.6 40 ain't no joke. That's pretty strong. It's basically Ted McMillan, right? So Shough can move 6'5", 4.6 40, but he really didn't run that much at Louisville. He only had one rushing touchdown. We all saw it. I think it was against Clemson, but he really didn't run that much. So I don't know if if that's obviously that's a facet of it. I mean, you want to be able to harness that and utilize it, but it'll be interesting to see how the Saints do that. I mean, it's not really being talked about that much, the fact that he does run a 4.6 40, but so we'll see how they factor that in.
So you feel like you're getting a really good quarterback in that.
Can you run a lot of the stuff that you ran with Jalen Hurts, the RPO type stuff with him, or is he a different guy?
I think it's probably a little bit different, but I think he does give you the tools to create some of that, and we'll just kind of see how it all plays out. We'll let that go, and we'll see when you need it.
Because you inherited from Dad, Justin, and Jalen, what was it like just going through this process of trying to find your guy, and what are the things you were looking for that he kind of checked along the way?
I would say every year you're evaluating the quarterback position just the same way you would any other year. Obviously, it just so happens to be we end up having the opportunity to just aligned with our pick and the opportunity to draft one. And so there's a lot of different ways of playing quarterback. I think it's important that you have accuracy, you have timing, you have some of the anticipation, you have the you have the brain power to be able process the game, and you got to have an ability to play in some sort of off schedule or different arm angles, and I think those are important aspects of this thing. And so we feel good.
What did you kind of learn along the way? I mean, I know you mentioned the adversity part, but kind of how he handles adversity in the moment, or is there anything you learned about how he kind of to not get you down on himself, for instance? What did that process kind of uncover?
A lot of great examples of throughout his career of just having an adversity moment, whether it be an injury or all these quarterbacks are going to throw interceptions. It's how you respond after that, and I think sometimes that's a fun task is when you're evaluating quarterbacks is watch them screw up, watch them throw an interception, see how they respond the next drive, see how they handle those different adversity moments. And so well,
it's also the same like with quarterbacks with pressure. So something that you really want to see in a prospect is their willingness to stand in a pocket, absorb pressure, and be good under pressure. Because in the NFL, you're going to be under a ton of pressure, like just in a pocket. A pocket is very rarely clean for a long time. So seeing someone in college who's willing to stand in that pocket, get hit, get sacked, how they feel in the pocket, like how they move around in it, are they bailing early? Like I think those are things to definitely look at. Where it might not be a pretty throw. Like they may end up throwing an incompletion or just moving around in the pocket, may end up taking a sack or whatever, but seeing how they operate in that world is something that's super transferable. If you see somebody in college who's bad in the pocket, shaky feet, bailing out of the back way too early, afraid to get hit, things like that, you don't teach that. That is just how they feel at the position. So that's something, if you're looking at Tyler Shough highlights and plays, that's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, certainly Tyler was one that you felt like, he had plenty of examples like that.
Is that something that he spoke a lot about you, Doug Nussmeier, as well as Scott Tolzien, all being former quarterbacks, and how that can help him grow. How, some of the things you just described feel like they're coming from a place of, I've been there, I've done that. How important is that in the process of developing a quarterback for you and your staff?
Well, that's important too for a fan. Okay, so just like we showed earlier, like some of the comments that are on Tyler Shough's Instagram or whatever, it's pretty. You can have your opinions on the pick, you can have your opinions on the system and all that, but at a certain point, you do have to sit back and say, well, and Kellen Moore was a quarterback, Tolzien was a quarterback, Nussmeier, like at a certain level, you got to kind of trust, like maybe these guys know something that I don't know. Maybe these guys see something, right? Like if a bunch of quarterbacks in the room are looking around and they're saying, that's our guy, draft him now, you got to kindly blindly trust. You got to kind of blindly trust that they know something, they see something, something's going on here. Now, it doesn't mean it is surefire going to work. No doubt. But that is an element of this is we can raise as many questions as we want, but the biggest thing we got to kind of rely on here is that brain trust has to know something.
I certainly feel very fortunate that we have Scott and Doug here. The experience that our room has as far as just guys who've been in that group. Scott Lenahan's here as well as a senior assistant. He's longtime head coach, offense coordinator in this league. He's been around a bunch of quarterbacks who've done it a lot of different ways. And so I feel like we have this ecosystem, that hopefully is a really healthy environment that allows, all these quarterbacks to continue to grow, not just Tyler, and I know Tyler's, today, but for Spencer to keep growing, for Jake to keep growing, for Ben to keep growing, for Derek to keep growing, for all these guys, hopefully we're creating a really healthy environment that allows these guys just to go play their best brand of football and it'll all take care of itself.
It is so weird every time he mentions the quarterback room, because even right there, he's like, yeah, Tyler grows, Spencer grows, Jake, oh yeah, and Derek Carr to grow, like, oh yeah, and our highest paid player on the roster, like, oh yeah, and that guy to grow, sure, yeah, wink, wink. It's such a weird quarterback room right now. So interesting to see how the Saints are going to navigate this. And I would assume, like with Derek, I would guess he's not the happiest bunny in the world with the Tyler Shough draft pick, which again I think is probably the sign that they don't expect him back.
Is that the kind of staff you intended to build specifically for this situation, or is that the kind of staff that you would have looked to build offensively regardless of where you would have ended up?
Certainly the quarterback position I think is a very valuable position. Obviously I have a lot of bias associated with that. Teaming up with guys that I've invested a lot of time over the last few years. Scott and Doug were both in Dallas when I was there at the same time. I've been with Scott for a number of years, a lot of different places as a player and a coach, and so I feel like we're creating a really healthy environment for these guys to grow.
I'm out of my depth here, but like I was watching some of his plays and I'm just curious, like as someone that played quarterback, like there's a lot of plays where he's going to his left and like he's able to throw like kind of sidearm like against the momentum. Is that hard to do at that position? Just kind of being a right-handed quarterback going that direction and throwing across your body?
Yeah, certainly the off schedule, the body positions. Quarterbacks get put in, we'd all love to take a 5-step drop, nice and pretty, sit there, stand firm, throw the ball. It's all fun. And I think a lot of guys can check that box. It's the guys who, okay, it's not clean, it's not perfect. How do you handle the adversity? He had some really battle-tested games where he's sitting in there at Notre Dame and he's taking a couple shots. He's gotten hit and he's hanging in there. And so a lot of examples of that.
You guys had 4 picks, in the first 3 rounds. Saints have traded up a ton in the last decade or so. Was it important? Was that like a thing in that room? Let's try to make all 4 picks, or did it just work out that way?
Certainly, discussions happen. It played out, really well. Obviously, having 9 picks, for this draft currently, we feel like we can provide a lot of depth, a lot of youth into this roster, and so I feel like we got 4 great opportunities so far through 2 days. We got a number more tomorrow, and it'll be a lot of fun.
How would you describe just the draft class as a whole, not individual to position, but how would you describe what you've achieved so far with this draft class, and what do you hope to achieve?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so.
So this was after day 2. So it's important to remember who he's talking about. So at this point, they've drafted first round, second round, third round.
Far with these 4 guys, I think you represent high character guys. A lot of guys who've been captains, who've been leaders in their different spaces, guys who've played a lot of football at big-time programs throughout this country. And so all that experience, I think, is going to be really, really valuable for us.
With Jonas specifically, with Brandon's star position, however you want to describe that, is he a player that kind of profiles into that type of role?
He definitely provides flexibility on the back end. He can play in a number of positions. You see him on the back end playing with range. You see him in the box being a really physical tackler. Obviously, he has the ability to kind of match up in some different situations.
Yeah, so I think that pick makes a lot of sense. Like if you're looking at Justin Reed, Tyrann, having a guy who you can kind of plug in and rotate in a very specific situations, I think it makes a lot of sense. So I think I like the pick.
And so he certainly will provide us with some flexibility, which I think is key for our back end, for those guys to be able to line up in multiple spots and kind of allow us the creativity to do that.
Does he project like as a core special teamer too?
Yes.
Yeah, especially off the bat, I think it's important that he can do that as well.
I had the note. I think 8 special teams tackles his senior year. So, I think that's a really cool stat. You're a big-time player at Virginia, and you're going and playing special teams as a senior. 8 tackles says a lot about him.
Like I'm saying, I think you can notice, like, he wants guys who are leaders, experienced, seniors, a lot of reps. Like, he wants that. And that's something that they are absolutely prioritizing, 100%.
Silly question, but does Tyler remind you at all, the way you like to play the game?
Man, I don't think they're similar at all. I mean, very different games. Kellen was very much a kind of rhythm on schedule kind of thrower, very efficient, very accurate. Kellen was much more of he was kind of like an assassin, where almost like Breeze in a sense, where they play kind of in that world. They're so quick as far as like analyzing the defenses and breaking everything down. Tyler seems like much more of a kind of that mixed with your Josh Allen or mixed with your Patrick Mahomes, where they want to get out of the pocket and they can move around and they can extend and they've got the arm and they're not afraid to throw. Like we see Josh Allen all the time throwing these like submarine passes, and Patrick Mahomes doing the same thing where he's basically on his stomach making a throw. Like Kellen Moore's not doing that,
It's a great question. It's been a little while, so
yeah.
I don't know. I think certainly there's other quarterbacks that you've been around. I think as you go through the process, I think he just did an excellent job taking advantage of each and every opportunity, and I think he's in a good position.
I don't think we've asked you this yet. Does his age, was that a factor at all in your decision making? I think he's going to be 26 by the time of the season.
It's certainly a discussion point. I think we all should have that discussion point just to confirm it. But we saw it as a positive. He's been through a lot of football. He's been exposed to a lot of different settings. Going from Oregon, Texas Tech to Louisville, and so and the quarterback position again. These guys aren't reaching their peak for a while, and so he's going to continue to rise and grow.
When you're looking at a high draft pick like that and considering the age, do you kind of look at it as you're only looking at the next 4 to 5 years of the initial contract, or do you try to look beyond 8-10 years from the future? Is it like a long-term outlook, or this is what this player can provide?
Yeah, I think
it's a really good question. So that was Kat Terrell. Really good question, because with other players, you do kind of look, and this is, people have asked me about the age thing. This is what I'm talking about, where the age alone isn't really a factor, but when you add it up with everything else, like this is obviously different. If you draft a 21-year-old quarterback, you are looking at, okay, what can he be in 6 years? What can he be in, what can he develop into? When you draft Tyler Shough, you're saying, what is he going to be pretty much immediately and for the next 3 to 4 years? And if he ends up extending and playing for 12 years or whatever, fine. But you can't draft Shough and be thinking, all right, in 6 years, where can we be at? Like that's not really it. So it absolutely does crunch that timeline. It absolutely does crunch the runway that he has to develop when he needs to be good and how good he needs to be, how fast.
I think you're looking at where's the growth opportunities, based off the age. Where's the growth opportunities, and maybe a little bit projecting out beyond that first that first contract, so to speak. But these quarterbacks will play plenty of years, and it's not like you're talking 30 years old. I mean, he's going to turn 26. I mean, we're fine.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, grand scheme of things, he's 26 years old. But even if you say, and this is, again, like kind of this very unique puzzle the Saints are in, even if Shough doesn't play this year, even if he does kind of just develop out, well, then what does that mean for Rattler? Because Rattler's going to be the starting quarterback if Shough doesn't play. So then what do you do if Rattler looks good? Do you then switch to Shough, or do you keep going with Rattler? Like, that's why it's such a puzzle. If it was Carr and Shough doesn't play, okay, whatever. You just turn it over to Shough next year. Okay, I see you. But because of Carr, because of Rattler, because of Shough, because of the money, because of the contracts, like it's just an absolute. I mean, it's crazy. It really is one of the craziest quarterback rooms you could possibly imagine. Is what we have right now with Carr and his shoulder and his contract, Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, Jake Haener. Absolutely nuts.
He's going to play out his full rookie deal, and maybe he's 30 or whatever. We can all do the math. It's fine.
Yeah, there's just so much often made of like a player's age. So I always wonder if teams look at it as, okay, well we're just gonna look at the first 4 years and he's in his 20s, so that doesn't matter to us. Or if you're maybe saying like I want a player around for 10 years and then maybe it does matter. But I assume every team looks at that.
Yeah, you can view it differently. Obviously, again, for that position, I think it's great. Bo obviously was a great example last year. Bo Nix, he played a bunch of football in college, played a little extra, maybe than the traditional schedule, and he had a great year.
Kellen, you think you're going to see a lot more
that work for him, that work for Tyler on film and everything? It's kind of easier to pick out the more physical things. What are some of the things maybe about him that stand out to you that maybe, unless you've been there, done that, you wouldn't?
So, I mean, this is kind of like what we're saying. Like, even with Bo Nix, who is an older player, right? Like, he played a ton of college football, older player. He just turned 25. Like, he's going to be 25 this entire season. He already has a year of NFL football under his belt. He was 24. Bo Nix is a weird example because he played 20 more games than Tyler Shough. He played a ton more actual football in college. Entered the NFL as an older player, but was 2 years younger than Shough will be. Bo Nix was 24, or 24 most of the year. Just turned 25. Will be 25 this year. Next year, you can do the math. He'll be 26. Whereas Shough played a whole lot less college football, entering 2 years older, and is less polished when they first entered. So, very weird situation.
On film? On film, I think on film.
Okay, yeah. I thought his exposure in the scheme that he played his last year, I thought was a great example of, he had a lot of tools at the line of scrimmage. He had the ability to get in and out of plays. Some of those intangible things I think are very valuable. So he has experience doing that, checking and making some decisions there at the line of scrimmage. And so, I think that's hugely valuable. Obviously, he's played in he's played in the action game. He's played in the quick game. I thought they had a cool blend. They play in the RPO and ball out game, but then they take their shots, and he can attack all levels of the game, and he's done all those. And so I think he's done a lot of things, which is a great advantage to him.
It's always important too to look at that, look at how you played at Louisville. That can probably give you an idea of what the Saints want to do with their offense, because they're not going to take a guy who can't do what they want to do. Similarly with Jalen Milroe. It is no surprise that he goes to Seattle, where Clint Kubiak is. What does Clint Kubiak like to do? Play action, deep ball. What's the best thing that Jalen Milroe does? Throw the deep ball, right? So it's very easy to figure out, okay, well, obviously Clint Kubiak is going to take some of the Taysom Hill stuff, the play action deep pass. That is perfect for a guy like Jalen Milroe. So, those are the easy equations. If you look at Tyler Shough, look at what he did well at Louisville, the kind of offense they operated in, more than likely, that's what pulls Kellen to drafting him, is whatever he's doing in there well, they're going to replicate in New Orleans.
Do you expect that in your system some of those things are there, especially ability to check in and out of plays and things like that? Is that something you plan to trust your quarterback with?
It's always something that I felt is a very valuable piece. Pretty much everywhere I've been as a player or a coach, it's always been important to embrace the quarterback has the tools, and they have the best view at the line of scrimmage. And so giving them the tools to make certain decisions, make little adjustments here and there, gives you the chalk glass, so to speak, and allows you to put yourself in the best position to be successful.
His arm talent is almost at the highest. How would you describe how good his arm talent is? That's his strong suit, right?
Yeah, he's got a great arm. Again, he can attack every aspect of the field, and he'll be fine.
Kellen, you think with the quarterbacks, with the age now, with the NIL in college football, I think they're going to stay in college a lot more now, and quarterbacks, coming out, going to be a little bit older?
I think it's fair to look at it that way. I think the positives to NIL is it's maybe providing these guys some financial security that also allows them to develop in college a little bit longer, and so they get more experience there. Again, for some guys, once they get to the NFL, if they're not immediate starters, they're playing in 2 or 3 preseason games, and that's about it. And you're trying to find other development opportunities. Well, now you get a chance to play a little bit more in college, play a bunch of high, big-time games. There's a lot of positives that can potentially come out of this.
Vernon is he primarily D tackle? Can he play some on the edge as well?
Yeah, D tackle probably start inside, but have the flexibility. Again, he can work his way out as you go. And obviously Bo having great experience with him. He's got the ability to line up in a number of spots, which was a big positive for us.
When you have versatility like that, or even using like Coleman as an example, do you guys start out at one position and then as the summer goes along, you introduce another position, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, traditionally most players, you're going to create kind of a starting point and let them grow from there. And so, you got to build confidence in these players as they go. You don't want to overwhelm with too much information and too many different things that they got to figure out. You want to get them going, build the momentum, and then give them the versatility as they go.
As a team entered this week in need of a quarterback, are you surprised at how the first 3 rounds have played out specifically at that position?
Yeah, the quarterback position is always a unique one as far as, every draft. It seems like there's always some surprises here and there in many different ways. And so, there's always surprises. There's always, there's some really good quarterbacks in this draft, certainly it's there's always going to be surprises.
I guess one of those is Shedeur Sanders.
I always talk about this. If you've been watching my videos, I always tell reporters, make sure you are asking the question. And, it's hard to do, but you always want to make sure what you're asking is just ask it. Don't hide it, right? Like that question right there, everyone knew he's talking about Shedeur Sanders, but he doesn't mention Shedeur. So that allows Kellen to kind of back out of the answer. The next reporter now comes in with the follow-up, which is Shedeur. So now this reporter right here is asking the actual question. I don't think Kellen's going to answer it, but it's always, if you're a reporter watching this, it's always something to think about.
I don't want to answer this, but why not him specifically, or was it just with Tyler?
Yeah. He was right in those conversations. Again, as we talk about this, these are really tough decisions, and really good player. What he accomplished at Colorado, and you watch the film, it's really, really good. Think really highly of him. Ultimately, as you go through it, you got to make a decision, and we felt like Tyler was the one for us.
There you go. Just to clarify, for Derek, there's no you didn't receive the clarity you guys were looking for from Wednesday.
No.
Did Derek's situation put more of an emphasis on we'd probably like to add a quarterback in this draft class because of that uncertainty, or?
We had kind of discussed this for a long time for the whole offseason, just as far as anytime if there's an opportunity to add value to that room, there's always you always want to take advantage of that, and so we discussed it for a while.
Short answer, absolutely.
All right.
Okay, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Shuck yeah. I mean, hey, it is what it is. Like I said, when the pick happened, Kellen Moore is drawing his line in the sand, and you got to kind of just say, okay, he's our quarterback now. That's it. It's either him or Rattler, and we move forward. So, all right, let me know in the comments below what you think. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.